We've got about 40 minutes, I think, to go for this final panel, to close the morning. Again, we've got a key question to answer, how to achieve and ensure quality. And I would like to really try and go into details of the measurement, how to measure, how to get the measurement of Baukultur now with all of you. Welcome. I just will quickly introduce you to the audience. Next to me is sitting Veronika Valk-Siska. You're an architect in Tallinn, and you are an advisor on architecture and design at the Ministry of Culture of Estonia. Welcome. And then we have got Natalie Mossin. You are the head of the Institute of Architecture and Technology of the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts, and you came to us from Copenhagen. Matthew Carmona, we already know, and then we have Bernhard Furrer, who was the former head of the preservation of monuments and sites of the city of Bern, and now he's a member of ICOMOS, the International Council on Monuments and Sites, based in Paris. So all of you kind of work with quality management systems. You have to somehow apply measurement in your work, and I would like to talk with you about that. But first of all, let's have a look at the questions already posted, and maybe we can also just switch to one of these. It's like job sharing with you. For me, it's great. Why is knowledge an informal tool? I think that's a question concerning the lecture, but it also affects this whole quality measurement thing. Matthew, or anybody?
Well,
what do you think?
Just an explanation on that. I mean, knowledge is an informal tool because it's not traditionally regarded as a responsibility of, for example, a planning authority or even necessarily the national government to educate the citizens or professionals about design quality. Yes, of course, there is a formal process of educating school kids and so forth, but typically it's a discretionary activity that the state can decide it wishes to be engaged in or not. And therefore it fits within that informal category.
Okay.
I would like to, if it's allowed, to stay a little bit with your lecture, because I think it's a great basis for this conversation.
Yes.
And I think you do two things. First, you lay out, and I think it's important to understand in regard to this question, informal in regard to what, because you lay out the many different ways that we, from different positions, works to ensure quality. And I think that's really a key point that we need to remember and maybe even repeat a few times through this discussion, because quality cannot, as you also show, it cannot be, we cannot work towards that with one tool. One group cannot work to ensure it alone. We need a lot of different actors, we need a lot of different tools. In regard to the building process, some of them are, in this respect, informal, other formal. You used a number of other definitions, the hard, the soft, the control, the incentives. And I think it's important to remember, as you also conclude, that we need all of these strategies to get the culture, because I think that's also key. It's the culture of Baukultur, and that's not something you can simply regulate. It's something that you have to advance with many tools, both the hard and the soft, the informal and the formal.
So there won't be at any time a common scale for our core question, like which everybody can apply.
And that's the daring second part of your lecture, because you point out the broad spectrum of all the tools we need that different actors need to use, and then you dare to say what is quality. And of course, that's a daring thing, and I think it's a good thing that you do it, to sort of illustrate what is it then that we can all agree about is quality. And I think the key here is also to say that will change over time. That's in a given moment, in a in a given society. It might also, it would change a little bit in different locales, but surely there are elements where we can meet each other, and you point out to some of them, where all actors, the politician, the citizen, the architect, the developer, can agree, well, we do believe, all of us, that this is quality. And in that sense, you could say that it becomes sometimes you talk about architectural quality as an empty signifier. It's sort of a concept that everybody can put what they want into. Because who don't want architectural quality, but what does it mean? And you dare to give a case for us to actually pin down something and say it's this, at this time, in this moment in time.
Thank you. I think the next question is one for you, Bernhard. How does this notion of value change over time? What can we learn from the past? That's kind of your field.
Je me permets de parler en français.
Is it okay for you,
Yeah,
Matthew?
could I get one of the translators?
Il faudrait avoir une traduction, bien entendu. Donc moi je pense que effectivement, comme c'était dit tout à l'heure, nos sensibilités pour la qualité changent dans le temps. Les places qui ont été, les sites qui ont été construits au 19e siècle, on les apprécie beaucoup, mais on ne les bâtirait plus comme ils ont été bâtis. Ceci dit, je pense qu'on ne peut pas simplement mettre des points, et ça c'est une remarque à vous directement, des points qui doivent être remplis pour avoir une bonne qualité. Je prends un exemple, vous avez sur votre escalier, tout en haut, la végétation qui est nécessaire. Pourtant, vous avez montré le Campo de Siena. Là, il n'y a pas un seul morceau de végétation. Il n'y a pas de bicyclette dessus. Et quand même, c'est une bonne place. Donc, je pense qu'il ne faut jamais prendre un système, un schéma, pour arriver à apprécier une qualité. Mais il faut toujours voir le cas individuel. Donc là, je pense on sera tous d'accord. Je pense qu'il faudrait élargir un peu toutes ces questions de points qui mènent à une qualité. Pour répondre à votre question, Madame Chassot et Monsieur Martin ont parlé des monuments historiques qui sont importants pour les sites. Et certainement, ils ont raison. Et voyant de l'ICOMOS, bien sûr, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec eux. Mais je voudrais encore élargir un peu ce thème, parce que tout site a une histoire. Et ce n'est pas nécessairement une histoire qui a une grande valeur artistique ou architectonique, mais ça peut être une histoire très simple. Et je pense une bonne qualité pour un site, quel site que ce soit, nécessite toujours une recherche très pointue, pas superflue et pas superficielle, une recherche qui ne prend pas seulement en compte ce qui est bâti, ce qui est matériel, mais qui prend aussi en compte ce qui est sensibilité, ce qui est l'esprit du lieu. Et je pense que ce serait vraiment important qu'on mette ça sur l'échelle. Donc cette recherche vraiment pointue et pas simplement on visite les lieux et puis on sait ce qui se passe, mais faire beaucoup plus.
But isn't this a little bit the same of like the place value that Matthew was talking about? So taking into account the soft facts of a place. Would that be so?
Pour moi, la
valeur
valeur accentuée se produit après une intervention. Et je pense qu'il faudrait vraiment être d'accord qu'on ait une base de manœuvre, une base de départ qui est vraiment solide.
D'accord, c'est le contexte. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Oh, I don't need that, do I? I've got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to come back on one point there, I think the point I was making is there is a lot of evidence around certain qualities that are fundamentally good for us as humans. Greenness is one of those. There's the most empirical evidence around the importance and value of greenness in the built environment. That's not to say every single space should have lots of trees in it. But a city needs to have those opportunities that we can engage with nature. So we were looking around at a very interesting new development here this morning, and there's planned to be a great new public park as part of that.
Okay.
And I think it's about building in these qualities into a quarter or into a city,
Be
but
aware.
not about every single space.
Yeah, but
It
be
needs to have
aware
all
of
them.
this.
Yeah.
Of the
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the question on the top is a question I would like to give to you, Veronika. Do you wish the state more involved in the planning process in the future? Because you just told me that you are building up a new quality management for architecture and design decisions in Estonia.
Yes.
How do you do that, and how much is the state involved in that measurement, in that scaling?
Indeed, thank you for this question. Well, the situation for us in this northeastern corner of Europe is that I would say that the state is involved in the planning and building processes anyways. The decision-making processes are rather fragmented, like we see in many European countries. And the decisions, the spatial decisions are made on a daily basis in so many different public authority institutions, and then the decision-making processes are truly all over the place. So the question for us is not about further involvement of the state in those processes, but rather the quality of decision-making. So how do we improve the awareness of what these political decision-makers are doing to our environment when they are, let's say, choosing a location for this and that, and how do we really enhance this spatial awareness of what we're doing? So it's not a question of quantity of involvement, but rather the quality of involvement. And for this purpose, what we are doing at the moment, we don't really have too many of these formal tools. We are rather trying to work with the informal ones. But the key question for us is understanding how the processes in spatial decision-making really roll out in space or roll out in time. That it's one thing to talk about the planning phase, and then the building phase, and then the building maintenance phase, and then the reuse of buildings phase. But then even before, prior to the planning phase, there is this gray area where the spatial decisions are made, like all the site locations, these kind of strategic planning decisions that have a huge impact on what later occurs through the urban planning, through the construction process, etc. How do we really tackle that? How do we go into that gray area where these different decision makers in different ministries, in all these different authorities are doing key decisions without really understanding what they are doing to the environment properly, without really weighing all the qualities that should be weighed. So we are really enlisting these different quality basic criteria that should be kind of considered whenever there is a spatial decision to be made. And among them, and coming back to the previous question, is the question of adaptability and flexibility of spatial solutions, because it's very, very expensive. It requires a lot of resources to change a spatial solution. So how can we create spaces and places that can adapt to future needs. And of course, no architect, neither political decision maker can foresee the future with full clarity. So it's a question, how do we create these resilient designs for places and spaces that could be adopted to future uses? So, and that goes beyond functionality. And another thing beyond this adaptability and flexibility is the generosity of architecture and urban design. That what can we do beyond offering the basic simple functionality? What do we do beyond fulfilling the technical requirements? And how do we then create places that are diverse, mixed, these vibrant places, as Matthew Carmona so eloquently explained in the lecture, places that are heritage friendly, that are social and reducing and avoiding segregation, that are healthy and safe, that are inclusive, climate aware, and I must say that so far our, let's say, regulations are driven by efficiency, monitoring performance that is measurable in quantitative terms. So the key question for us is how to really start to take into account the qualitative aspects when entering this gray area of spatial decision making.
And how much is the public being involved in your system, in your quality management system or tool you're building up?
Well, speaking of these different phases, that there is the planning phase, there is the construction phase, and then the maintenance phase, etc. Then in the planning phase, there is a proper regulation in place to engage the locals and then and the people who live in the neighborhoods, etc. And whether it works well or not, it depends. Sometimes it works well, sometimes not. But the gray area that takes place prior to entering the planning phase, the gray area is not very inclusive. So and it's also partially because of let's say the general lack of spatial awareness across the society horizontally. So another key question for us is how to raise spatial awareness from very early on. We are working with children, we are working with secondary schools and with high schools across Europe, across Estonia at first, but then moving to Europe. And it's all based on an initiative which is an architecture hobby school, and it's been active for more than 10 years now, and beyond the weekly lessons and then the classes where they really teach this, environmental awareness and attention to design, they make architectural competitions for children and then really engage schools, and also are active in teacher training.
Okay. You wanted to add something?
Just adding to this point with the kids, that also the Danish national policy on architecture, one of the cornerstones is to get the architecture into primary school, into the early education. And I think that's key. I mean, harking back to one of the questions yesterday, there was this question of sort of how do we open this up so it doesn't become like an elite discussion among ourselves. Yes. And I think in reality, the only way we get a strong building culture, Baukultur, in the future is if we have a strong culture for architecture in the whole of society. We need the support of the whole culture. So we need the kids, we need the parents, we need the grandparents, we need together to have this culture. And if we have such a culture, that's one of the strongest sort of soft powers. Because if people are engaged in what architecture is and can do, they will, of course, advance quality, and they will support good solutions, and it will pay back to them. But if we don't support and foster a strong culture, and it's not just for architecture, it's also literature, it's the arts, music, we have to create societies where there's a strong culture, and if we do that, it will come back and support the work, and we will be able to create the quality that we're talking about.
But I think you must be there in a quite already good position. aren't you? Because Copenhagen is regularly ranked as one of the cities with top life quality. So there must be definitely some things you are doing the right way.
Well, thank you.
What is it, and how do you achieve this quality and ensure it?
Well, I was just thinking that you should definitely meet the city architect of Copenhagen, because there's a number of the studies and the policies implemented by the city of Copenhagen that are interesting in regard to this, both in doing studies that prove the return of investment in, for instance, urban renewal, which is, as you're also showing, something that we actually quite easily can demonstrate. But also in working with all these soft tools of the declarations of intentions, so that developers and others working in Copenhagen know in which direction the city wants to go.
So the state is very much involved.
But it's again, going back to your lecture, it's like a complex combination of many things. So there's a government level, there's very strict building codes for the whole of the country. There's the city level, which combines the hard and the soft, so there's like the zoning laws and so on, but there's also the inspirational in the form of the policies that are not mandatory, but advised. And then, of course, there is a strong involvement of citizens. We are a small society in Denmark with a very strong culture of associations and of citizen organization. And that, of course, also plays in, because that makes the citizens able to communicate with their officials and influence decisions. Because citizens, they know what they want as well.
Yes.
They want that little pocket park rather than a parking space and so on. But it's really a combination of all these different tools. So there's no, I think that just has to be repeated again and again. There's no simple answer. There's no one system we can just implement and then lie back and never think about it again. It's going to be difficult, full of gray zones, and it's a continuous effort by all actors involved.
Okay, okay. I just have a look into the room. Is there somebody who would like to intervene directly into the discussion, not via screen? Yes, please. I think there is a micro coming to you.
The mic is coming.
Could you please just tell us your name?
Hello,
please?
Ilir Nase. I had a question for Matthew, as someone who's had a look at the wiki before and someone who's involved in this evidence research. I was just wondering, how did you take, or whether did you take into consideration a confirmation bias of some sort within these studies? Have you considered that when taking the evidence together?
Do you want to explain what you mean?
The confirmation bias is that when you produce evidence that builds upon only one particular evidence, so the whole idea of building up on previous studies that confirm the quality of place?
I mean, most of the studies that we looked at, it would be difficult to say that none of them have any such bias built into them. I think what is impressive is when you start to look at the range of studies. So if you look at any one study, you might say this has particular flaws methodologically or otherwise, but actually when you see 20 studies which are all pointing in the same direction, which have slightly different methodologies, different places, often the studies are from all around the world, you start to have much more confidence, I think. So in that sense, what the wiki is doing is a bit akin to in the medical field, where we have a particular medical problem and there's a study that looks across a whole range of evidence. And that's what the wiki tries to do. And that should give us confidence.
By all means, it's a very useful tool. I'll just give you two examples from empirical evidence that I've come across. One is in Canada that says that when you have some low density for homes, so when you have some low density greenery, that adds value to your home. But when you overlook high density greenery, that's associated with lower prices. Yeah. And I don't really exactly remember how they were measuring it. Probably higher density would be woodlands, etc. But this is one piece of evidence that, since we were talking about the greenery here, something more recent that I've come across, I got myself interested into the value of height. So how much are people willing to pay on height? And everywhere we found that people, like, it's a positive correlation between height and price. Yeah. However, only recently I come across a study in Singapore when they say that height and prices are negatively correlated. And it's like, that all shaked all my research recently that I'm doing, and I took a step back. So all of these things is about the methodology that is used, that obviously is okay, good, but you know, no model is correct. So that's the thing.
So, for example, height is one of the issues that we put in the be careful box, because evidence points in different directions. Whereas something like greenness, I mean, the sheer quantity of, you know, maybe there's 50 studies that look at it from all sorts of different angles, and you can be really confident when you think about the importance of greenness to our well-being.
Yeah, many thanks. Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions right at the moment? If not, I'm going to have a look at the Slido. And I think the first question reminds me of one that has been posted yesterday, which was, why are we good in measurement of historic sites, but not in contemporary ones, like something like that. And I think it's a little bit the same direction of question. Bernhard, can you give us an advice?
Finalement, je pense aussi pour les vieux sites, c'est très difficile à mesurer. Si on voit comment on doit mesurer les valeurs des nominations pour le bien universel de l'UNESCO, on voit très bien que chaque site est différent de l'autre d'une telle manière qu'on ne peut pas comparer l'un avec l'autre finalement, et que c'est pratiquement impossible de mesurer. On a appris hier, je pense qu'on était tous et toutes plus ou moins d'accord, que ce n'était pas possible de faire des notes à des sites qui ont été rétablis nouvellement. Et je me suis demandé un peu comment on pourrait faire une autre manière de mesurer. Et j'ai pensé à une mesure au pas. Mesure au pas, ça signifie de voir combien de personnes fréquentent un lieu. Oui. Ça, c'est facile à trouver. Et combien de temps ces personnes restent sur ces lieux. Et si on arrive à améliorer cette fréquence en nombre et en temps de sosta, alors on pourrait certainement dire qu'une place est réussite mieux ou pas tellement bien. Et j'ai vu tout à l'heure sur l'écran aussi une question, pourquoi on se sent tellement bien dans les vieilles villes? Oui. Voilà, oui. Peut-être moins que dans un quartier à l'extérieur. Et je pense que ça a quelque chose à faire avec la fréquence que dans les vieilles villes, qui sont normalement les centres aussi commerciaux d'une agglomération, on a beaucoup de gens, on a une intensité de se voir et d'être vu, les deux sont importants, qui est très grande. Et les vieilles villes nous font encore sentir quelque chose de plus qu'un site nouvellement réaménagé ne pourrait jamais donner. C'est qu'on sent l'histoire, on sent cette qualité de continuité dans nos vies qu'on a normalement, et c'est tout à fait évident, qu'on ne peut pas avoir dans un site qui est renouvelé maintenant. Je pense que c'est ces deux choses qui sont importantes pour les vieilles villes, les vieux quartiers, les centres. C'est d'une part cette grande fréquence des personnes et d'autre part ce sens de l'histoire qui nous fait rassurer notre vie à nous-mêmes.
Existence, oui, voilà. Il y a hier, Monsieur Otschers a dit que la culture a besoin du temps.
C'est ça.
Ouais.
Et vous avez aussi parlé de ça, Mathieu. Je pense que c'est très important qu'on pense dans le temps.
Oui.
Et je me suis demandé aujourd'hui, dans votre conférence, si on ne devait pas ajouter encore une qualité, qu'on aménage des sites en étapes.
Oui.
Est-ce que ce ne serait pas important de ne pas avoir un projet fixe? On le décide, on le met en place, et puis c'est fini. Est-ce qu'il ne serait pas mieux d'avoir un processus pour avoir un premier pas, de voir comment ça fonctionne, après on peut faire un deuxième pas, et peut-être qu'on le fera déjà pas dans la toute même direction comme on l'avait planifié. Donc, penser dans le temps, pour moi, ça serait aussi dans la réalisation de toutes ces interventions.
I think that's also what you have been mentioning by trying to stay flexible concerning the use of a place so that changes can be adopted. I would like to add a term that hasn't been mentioned yet at all, emotion. We talk about measurement, about like evidence and so on, and there are lots of emotions, and the emotion is something of a really important thing. We all have emotions in certain places. Do we take into account enough that people have emotions walking through a city, using a space, in terms of quality management?
Just adding also, building on what you were saying, last year at the Venice Biennale, the architect Søren Nielsen, partner in Vandkunsten, brought to the Biennale 2 chairs by Wiener, the Y chair. One was 60 years old, original, and they produced them again, and they used the same craftsmanship. He also brought a new one. Looking at the themes of this whole conference, the qualitative and the quantitative, for all the quantitative measures, the 2 chairs are the same. They're both very good quality, very good design, and obviously they're both valuable, something you would want to keep. But the economic value of the old one is higher. And that is because of the accumulation of history, of meaning, the meaning we put into this chair because it's original. It's what he did himself. We also want a new one because it's a good chair.
Yeah.
And Søren Nielsen's point, he's building buildings, he's not designing chairs, but he said we have to look in a circular economy moving forward. We have to look at all the components we put into our buildings as we look at that chair. They have to be something that people want to keep, and they want to keep it more than they want to replace it. And if we can accomplish that for architecture, then we have created quality.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to this issue of how do we measure quality, and slightly picking up on your issue of emotions as well, because I think it's perfectly possible to measure the quality of a place.
Yes.
But it's time consuming and it's expensive, and we shouldn't have to do it all the time for every single scheme, because that's a waste of resources. But it's perfectly possible to do. I recently finished a study where we were looking at streets in London that had had public realm improvements and for Transport for London. They'd spent a lot of money on these public realm improvements, and they wanted to know if they did other schemes over the next 10 years, would they be beneficial? Is it worth their while making that investment? So they commissioned a piece of research. We looked at before and after data. There's a huge amount of data is available now. What's happening to the property market, what's happening to people's health locally. You can interview people to get a sense of exactly that emotional reaction. Yes. How do they respond to changes, both before and after schemes happen. There's all sorts of ways of collecting data so that we can understand what impact a change in the built environment has had on people. And we can measure that, and we can measure it very scientifically. And it comes back to this question of the different types of value that we get from a scheme. But you wouldn't want to do that with every single project. Great for researchers, but not great for the budget of our public authorities. So but you need to do it from time to time to make sure that what you're doing is you're spending your money well and you're getting good results. And then you have the confidence to go on and on the same principles, deliver more projects. But you absolutely can measure. We heard yesterday about the very scientific approach of wearing monitors and monitoring your brain processes and so forth. I don't do any of that, but there's all sorts of other ways of doing the same thing through observations, through talking to people and so forth. So there's many ways that scientifically we can measure quality.
And to ensure quality, what about labels, awards, rankings, tools that have been come up recently in the past years?
Rankings, I think, are highly problematic. They're usually highly skewed. They're usually put together by organizations that want to sell their services.
Yes.
By commercial organizations who rank particular things and don't rank other things. I wouldn't trust any rankings that rank one city against another. But things like promotions and awards and all those things which are about growing the culture of design that we heard about in the case of Copenhagen are really important and need to be done in a concerted way over time. The problem we have in the UK is governments go like this. One moment they're really interested in design, next moment they're not interested. Then they're interested, then they're not. And it's 5-year cycles we're on, and it's disaster because you put lots of policies and tools and things in place, and then they're all wiped away. What you want is the Copenhagen example where there's a consistent emphasis over time, there's a commitment, and that commitment is built into the culture, and it grows up through time. And you have it in some places and not in others.
Yeah. Bernhard, you wanted to ask something?
Je pense que ce qu'on vient de discuter, c'est aussi une tâche pour les associations des architectes et des architectes paysagers. L'éducation des jeunes, c'est vraiment une tâche très importante pour l'État, mais il faut la collaboration avec les associations des architectes. Et là, je pense qu'on ne fait pas encore assez, de toute façon, en Suisse, c'est certain. Et en France, on n'a rien du tout, si je suis bien informé. Et les architectes, ils auront aussi un rôle important à jouer pour des prix, pour de bonnes places. Il faut parler de ces choses. Il faut parler, pas dans le cadre intime de notre bubble que nous avons ici, mais il faut parler aussi dans les journaux de ces choses-là. Et là, les architectes, je pense, ils pourraient faire plus de ce qu'ils font maintenant.
D'accord. Since we're running out of time, I would like to come to the final question. We should think about this document, because that's the reason why we are all here and why we're trying to figure out how to get the measurement of Baukultur. There is a process, a further process after this conference. Yesterday we've been talking about wish, whoop, wish. Whoop starts with wish. So what would be your wish concerning the further process of this document and the effort to strengthen high quality Baukultur? What would help in your work to strengthen the quality? So therefore, what would be your wish for the further process? Maybe somebody's ready. Just start.
I think that also looking at this document, it's a partnership. There's a lot of architectural know-how in that document, and then there's endorsement by the ministers of culture. It's that combination that makes it powerful. So think about partnerships. Think about, of course, I know all here are deeply engaged in the quality and to implement it through their own practice. But think about maybe could you do a little bit for somebody else's knowledge or culture, like volunteering on Architecture Day to go and give a lecture at your local school. Just a little thing that helps these discussions to move out of the conference hall and into all the places where conversation about architecture should be present.
Thank you.
I mean,
Any
I would
other
say
wishes?
commitment is the key thing, commitment over time. I was very impressed yesterday when I was speaking to some colleagues from different government departments here from Switzerland. You'd never get that back home. Government departments work in silos and they don't talk to each other. So if this sort of commitment is being seen across government departments and they're talking to each other and forming partnerships around this whole question, then that's really positive and something to build on.
Okay.
Moi, je pense que finalement, chaque site qu'on a, que ce soit un bâtiment ou une place, c'est toujours une question des gens qui sont sur place, qui doivent essayer d'améliorer ces sites. Et ces gens sur place, ils sont seulement capables de le faire s'ils ont une formation dès l'école, dès les premiers âges de l'école, pour savoir ce que ça veut dire la Baukultur, la culture du bâti. Et je pense si les prochains pas dont vous parlez,
Oui.
serait qu'on invite et qu'on presse un tout petit peu les États à faire plus dans la formation de l'école, et pas des autres écoles, mais des écoles primaires. Ça serait très important.
Voilà. Veronika, do you also have a wish if you could be queen for a day in Estonia? What would you do to strengthen the quality of the built environment?
Well, I very much echo with what Matthew said on crossing over to the other government departments and actually getting across this message that we all want to find inspiration in our living environment. And I truly enjoyed Colin Ellard's lecture yesterday because I think there's a lot of, there's so many things the other disciplines can teach us about how we perceive the environment around us and what we can learn from it as architects, how to design better places, but really how to get this message of quality across to other fields.
Yes.
That's the key question, and maybe also reminding ourselves that when we think of how someone wants to sit in a chair on stairs in a public space, that rather than the physical material of the stairs, it's the view that opens from the stairs is what makes us actually sit down there and enjoy the location. So it's not that much always down to the physical design of the place or space itself, but rather also what surrounds it and how it opens up to the neighborhood and everything else around it. So it's all connected. And this kind of connectedness should drive what we are doing so that we can find inspiration in our living environment.
I think we all agree in this. Thank you very much for your contributions. We have the wish and we have the whoop. We all know what to do. Do the whoop. Thank you very much for your contributions to this panel discussion. And now we should quickly move to the next part of the program, the two parallel sessions. Parallel session 3 will take place in the Petit Dôme upstairs, and session 4 will take place here in the Grand Dôme. I wish you a good continuation in discussions and insights on the conference. Thank you very much.